Episode 87. This week we cover Datalore. Datalore is the episode this week. This one, the Enterprise is on its way to its next assignment, and they just happen to be going by the home planet of Lieutenant Commander Data. It's where they discovered him. Omicron Theta is the name of the planet. And Picard's like, we got a few minutes, so we'll just go there. Data's not worried about it, and he's practicing sneezing when Wesley Crusher gets sent to check on him because they're like, well, Data should be on the bridge all nervous about getting to his home planet, and Data's like, nope, trying to perfect sneezing. They get Data on the bridge, and they're like, do you want to handle the controls and put us in orbit? And he's like, nope. He's not worried about going to this planet at all, but Picard and the rest of the crew are like pushing it really hard. They beam down to the planet, and they're looking around, and they discover that it's a barren planet, no life forms on it, just a big giant desert. But then they find this little tiny cave, and they're like, look at this, a button. They hit the button. There's a secret compartment that leads into like this hidden bunker. And they go into the bunker, and they discover another android similar to Data that's been put into pieces. So they're like, well, we might as well take this android up and put them together and see what happens. So they do so. They get up there. They're running tests on this new android and everything. Data tells Dr. Crusher, hey, don't tell anyone, but I have an off switch right here. And he shows her the off switch. He's like, you probably wouldn't want people to know you had an off switch if you had one, so don't tell anyone else. And Crusher's like, oh, okay. They get this new android put together, and this new android says, oh, I'm your brother Lore. We were both created by Nooney and Soon, but I was created too perfectly, and you were built to be less perfect than I am. That's why you're inferior to me. And Data's like, oh, okay. And so Lore's like slowly kind of learning the ship. They're teaching him the functions of the ship and so forth, just as they taught Data when he was discovered, apparently. Lore's got this facial tic, and he can speak with contractions. So there's differences there you can use to tell them apart. But Lore comes up with this plan. The reason the planet they were from was barren was because this crystalline entity showed up and destroyed the planet. Presumably killed everyone on it, except for Lore, apparently, and Data. Everyone else, they fled or were killed by this crystalline entity. Lore decides he wants to lure that entity back, take over the Enterprise, or something to that effect. It didn't seem like a well thought out plan. He ends up poisoning Data with wine, which Data didn't drink wine, but he drank a shot of wine apparently for reasons. It's poisoned with android poison. Data's out of it. Wesley Crusher picks up on the fact that, hey, this isn't Data, this is Lore trying to take over the ship. Every time he tries to say something, somebody says, shut up, Wesley. And Wesley's like, well, okay, I will. And instead of pointing out, hey, this and this and this don't match up, or I've seen this, this, and this, he just doesn't say anything to anybody, just stops. He's just kind of like, hey, something's wrong. They're like, shut up. And he's like, oh, okay. And he sits back down, gets relieved of duty. He discovers Data in Lore's quarters. Data's like, huh, we've all been tricked. And so Wesley Crusher, his mother, and Data end up in the cargo bay to try to stop Lore because he's looking to shut down the shield so the crystalline entity can get to the Enterprise, and then he's going to do something or another that didn't get too clear. So there's this big fight. Dr. Crusher gets shot in the arm. She runs off. Data and Lore are brawling. Finally, they get Lore onto the transporter pad, and Wesley Crusher beams him into space. And Captain Picard's like, well, that's a relief. I'll send the security there now that everything's over. Security comes running in. The ship's saved by Wesley Crusher and Data, and to a lesser extent Beverly Crusher, apparently. Data speaks using contractions to Picard, but everything else is back to normal. That was pretty much that one. Some interesting notes in this one. It was the first time we saw Lore. The first time Data's extended family was seen. They'll pop up here and there throughout the rest of the series. But it was Lore's first episode of several episodes. Brent Spiner doing a dual role as Data and Lore. He did a great job with it. This was also the popular Shut Up Wesley episode where they used that for memes and GIFs and what have you. Wil Wheaton not a fan of it. He's not a fan of that Shut Up Wesley at all. Probably hated it at the time, especially hates it now. So he did not like that. Data, like I said, used contractions because they hadn't fleshed out Data completely yet. So sometimes he would use contractions. Lore made it seem like Data could use contractions, but chose not to do so. But in later episodes, Data would say he is not capable of using contractions. So they were still fleshing that out. Made a mistake here and there. This was an example of that. And it was the first time we saw the crystalline entity. That comes into play in a couple of more future episodes as well down the line. But pretty much episode 87